everyone, good afternoon and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I am especially pleased to welcome Debbie Austin, who's going to be talking to us today about her personal journey with positive behavioural support. The ideas of these Lunch and Learn sessions are that they are a very relaxed, informal space for health and care staff to come together to share any experiences, to learn something new relating to health and care, to focus on some quality improvement, and of course to be signposted to any further resources. Just to take you through some protocols for our session today. Please make sure your webcams are off unless you're invited to contribute. Please make sure that you're mute when you're not speaking, and you should feel free to use the chat for any questions or contributions about today's session. We will have some time at the end for questions and answers. Please listen with respect and be present, and of course teach it forward, share this with any colleagues. And you should also know that we are recording, so the recording will be available after the session on the Boost YouTube channel. So without further ado, I will introduce you once again to Debbie, who is going to talk to us about her journey with positive behavioural support. Over to you, Debbie.
Oh, thanks so much, Tracy, and thanks to Boost for inviting me to do this Lunch and Learn for you today. I do hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to talk to you today about our personal journey, my lived experience raising my gorgeous daughter, who's called Lucy, and about how we use this thing called positive behavioural support to live our lives. I work for the NHS. I work as part of the Learning Disability Network, which is an ICB-wide network, and my role is a strategic workforce development manager for family carers. So I basically focus on the needs, the rights of family carers, who are a massive unpaid workforce for our communities. I also work for the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, and I deliver some of their PBS courses. I also work for MenCap, and I have in the past delivered a programme called EPATS, which is something you can look up. It's early intervention for families. And I've also worked with Warwick University as part of their Positive Family Connections work. And clinically, I've got a clinical background. I'm a physiotherapist, and I worked for many years in a community learning disability team before I took this job. Can I have the next slide, please, Tracy? So before I introduce you properly to Lucy, I'm just going to talk to you about, well, what is this thing called positive behavioural support? And basically, it's the approach that we use to support our daughter. Lucy has Down syndrome. She's 15, and when she was 5, we found out that she's autistic. Lucy, when she was about 3, began displaying behaviours that we would have described as, well, we would describe as challenging, and we'll go into that a bit more shortly. Positive behavioural support is best practice. It's the way of supporting people with learning disabilities or autistic people who display behaviours that might be described as challenging. And what I love about it, it's a values-based approach. I really had to change my mind and my thoughts about what I felt about Lucy's behaviours, and Lucy herself actually, when we were seeing these behaviours, and I'll explain a bit more as we go forwards. It's a proactive approach, and what that means is that we live a life where we actually spend most of our time creating an environment or a world for Lucy where she doesn't need to use behaviours that would be described as challenging. So it's really proactive. We don't see many behaviours now. When we began this journey, we were seeing behaviours that we would describe as challenging multiple times a day. And now we probably see them sort of 6, 7 years on, or eight years on, probably 2 or 3 times a year, I would say. And we got from that position of multiple times a day to 2 or 3 times a year using PBS and without any punishment at all. And when I say this to families, they look at me in utter disbelief that we managed to do that, but it is doable because PBS doesn't have a place for punishment. You know, that is not the way that we support Lucy when we're seeing behaviours that would be described as challenging. So we don't give her time out, we don't tell her off, we don't give her sanctions, we don't remove things from her, we don't make her earn the right to things that bring her joy. So we don't say you can only have this if you behave well. You know, that isn't a part of PBS at all. And that's quite a different way of parenting someone. So I had to go through quite a big change, this values-based change as a parent, to actually implement these strategies and start thinking in this way, because I would say it's a way of life. PBS is our way of life. It's not like medicine. It's not like something that you take when times are hard. It's, you know, and it's not even like exercise that you do 3 times a week for half an hour just to keep things ticking along nicely. PBS isn't like that. PBS is our way of life. It's changed how I think and how I feel about situations that I come across. It's changed the way I interact. It's changed the things I say. It's changed the things I do. So and it works. The other thing I would say about PBS, because you may hear other things about PBS, maybe things that aren't so positive, because there is other narratives out there, but I always say that PBS is ultimately kind, and that's why I love it so much. And I would say that if what we're saying to people and what we're doing to people isn't kind, then I would honestly say that it's probably not PBS. So I feel that PBS is ultimately kind. I speak kindly to my daughter at all times, and I am human, but you know, that is the intention, and I certainly don't blame her for her behaviours. Can I have the next slide, please, Tracy? So let me introduce you to Lucy. And and I want to start with her strengths and her passions. And anybody who's working with somebody with a learning disability or an autistic person, that's where you should start. You know, you should always start to get to know the person and think about their passions and their strengths, because all too often the reason you're involved as a healthcare profession is because of challenges that a person is facing. So let's start with someone's strengths. So Lucy, as I said, she's 15, she has Down syndrome, and she's autistic. She has a huge sense of humour and a love of slapstick, and she uses both to connect with people. So if something goes wrong and I'm like, oh no, you know, what's happened there? She loves that, and she comes really up close and she wants to connect with you. She thinks it's hilarious if she makes me laugh. So she loves that. If she makes me laugh, she repeats what she said over and over again, because she loves that connection. She's incredibly resilient, and I think this is true of everybody who lives with disability, especially people with learning disabilities or autistic people, because she gets up every morning with a smile on her face and she greets a world that is largely inaccessible. So that takes some resilience. She has some speech, but her speech is limited, and it's her understanding is very concrete. So she can talk about where things here are and what things are called, but we can't talk about how she feels, what's happened, why things are happening. So sort of abstract parts of speech are not accessible for her. She's got a fantastic memory, and she loves music and singing. She's very determined. If she thinks something needs to be done in a certain way, she will move heaven and earth to make that happen. That can be described as challenging, but you know, I see it as determination and a strength. She is so social. Lucy is so social, and she needs an awful lot of support to be the social, you know, the social person that she wants to be. We're very fortunate that she's had good health. Apart from being very poorly at 18 months, we've had good health since. She loves being on a beach, and she loves a really big tickle. Next slide, please, Tracy. Lucy's does have high support needs, and first of all, I'll say that her learning disability would be described as a severe learning disability. She finds it very difficult to learn new things. We need lots of repetition and to make things very, very accessible for her. She has high levels of anxiety, and I would too, if the world was confusing for me as it is for her. And as I said earlier, she has this concrete understanding of the world. So I can say to her, Lucy, your beads are on the table, but I can't say to her, did you have a nice day at school? You know. She has limited danger awareness, as would make sense, because I can't explain things as like why we need to do things in a certain way. I can't use sentences that start with the word because, as they're not accessible for her. So her communication, she needs support by people who know her really well. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. You know, she starts a new school year and a whole lot of new teaching assistants are there to meet her, and nobody knows how to communicate with her effectively. She needs support for her fine motor skills. And I will say that I have to anticipate all her needs. I have to think about how hungry she is, how thirsty she might be. Is that enough drink for you? Are you in pain? You know, so all her needs are supported. And for anyone who does that for their loved one, I want to say, you know, it's a huge thing that we do. It's a massive responsibility to make sure that someone's needs are being met when they can't tell you what they are. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Lucy's behaviours and these started probably when she was about 2 or 3. And one of the most challenging ones that we came across was taking off other people's glasses. She would go to people in a cafe, in the street, in school, and take their glasses off and throw them away, which is a very intimate thing to do to someone. Have this hand coming right up to your face and throwing your glasses away. It was a very difficult situations to deal with. She would also pull people's hair, take out people's hair bobbles and clips, especially at school, and she would hit and grab people's hands and fingers, scratch, things like that, and do some pushing and some throwing as well. Can I have the next slide, please? And I had very few strategies to deal with this, and know what to do, really. I was at a bit of a loss. I knew I couldn't explain to her why we didn't hit people or scratch or take people's glasses off. So I was really struggling to know what to do. And I think I did these few things pretty inconsistently, which probably didn't help Lucy at all. So I would try things like I would tell Lucy what I wanted her to do and not what I didn't. So I'll talk about the time when Lucy used to hit me a lot. And that was generally in the morning, putting her shoes on, ready for school. And she'd sit on the stairs and I'd be putting her shoes on and I would just get repeatedly hit in the face. And it didn't hurt, but I was worried. I was worried that, she was doing this at 7 or 8. What's it going to be like when she's 17 or 18 or 27 or 28? And how are people going to treat her? Because I love her, and I found it difficult. Oh, sorry, Tracy, back to the other slide. Thank you. I love her and I found it difficult, but, how are people going to treat her? I was very worried, especially with all the publicity there are about people's treatments in assessment and treatment units and things like that. So I tried to tell Lucy what I wanted her to do and not what I didn't. So I'd say things like hands down, Lucy, and kind hands, Lucy. And kind hands was a really big sort of feature of the way that I tried to support her. I tried to praise her when she didn't hit me. So I had to try and remember when she wasn't hitting me that she wasn't hitting me and tell her that she wasn't hitting me and how good she was for not hitting me, which is actually harder than it sounds, because when you're not being hit, you don't think about being hit. So I would try and praise her and say, what lovely kind hands you've got, my darling, and aren't you doing well, these beautiful kind hands? And I would try to ignore it. When she hit me, I would try not to give that behaviour any attention whatsoever, and I would try to ignore it. And I had some kind hands, and I had this little sticker to hold up to remind her to use kind hands. And I had some cards and some stories, and none of it was working. And if any of you here are in the audience are already versed in PBS, you will be smiling to yourself saying, well, I'm not surprised that isn't working, Debbie. But yeah, none of that was working and I was at my wit's end. So I called my learning disability nurse and I said, Jo, please help. I've got all these resources, I've got my kind hand sticker, but nothing's helping. What do I do? Next slide, please. And what Jo told me opened this door. Was the light bulb moment for the new way, because she said to me, Debbie, I've got absolutely no doubt Lucy knows exactly what kind hands are. That's not the point. She is trying to tell you something. Oh. And that's when it all began to change. And now it seems obvious to me now. I'm sort of 7 or 8 years on. And every time I see a behaviour that I would think of as challenging, or even some behaviours that just are a bit out of character, I'm thinking, what are you telling me, Lucy? But back then, that isn't the way I was thinking at all. All I wanted to do was stop the behaviour. I absolutely wanted it to stop because of the reasons I mentioned earlier, because of the way people would treat her. So my focus was on, how do I stop you? Okay, and I need to be kind to my younger self, because it took a learning disability nurse to come to our house to tell me that message. She knows what kind hands are. You don't need to keep reminding her about kind hands. She knows. But she's trying to tell you something in the only way she can. So that's when it all began to change. So my GP didn't tell me that. My parents didn't mention it to me. My friends, nobody, the teachers at school. Everyone was on the same kind of message as I was. You need to stop that, Debbie. You need to get a handle on that. She can't be doing that forever, can she? You need to get on top of that. You need to take control. These were the messages that were coming at me. And it was only our learning disability nurse who actually said something different. She's trying to tell you something. That was interesting. And that's when it all began to change. Next slide, please. So I realised Lucy's behaviours were actually her way of telling me that she needed something. So I did change my approach. I had to change my approach from this, I need to stop you, I just want it to stop, to one of curiosity. kindness and compassion. So of saying, well, what are you trying to tell me then, my darling? Well, what do you need, my darling? And what on earth is wrong? What can I do to help you? And it's it evokes a very different response from you. I saw these behaviours as distress. And if someone says to you, you're going to meet someone who's challenging, you kind of might sort of square up a little bit and think, oh, because I need to prepare myself for, meeting this person. If someone tells you you're going to meet someone who's in distress, you feel different. You're just like, oh my goodness, I need to help. What can I do? So it completely changes. Like I said earlier about the values, it changes how I responded to her, how I approached her. Everything changed. So I had to try and work it out. Well, what is Lucy trying to tell me? Next slide, please. Now, I do a much longer presentation about this where I go into detail of how I found out and different things you can look at. And I run this every month for families. It's about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour workshop. But basically, trying to work out what Lucy was trying to tell me took many conversations. It can be worked out with collecting information with charts and things. But for me, it was actually a critical conversation with a teaching assistant, because I was suddenly, right, I need to find out what she's trying to tell me. And it looked very much like, go away, leave me alone. And so I went into school and I was like, this is happening a lot in school. So is she overwhelmed? So I said to her teaching assistant, who knew her really well, this is at mainstream school, Lucy's trying to tell us something with this behaviour. What do you think it is? Is she overwhelmed? Is she tired? Is it too much? Is she trying to get some space? And this wonderful teaching assistant said, Debbie, I don't think it is. She said it seems to happen at school when I'm working with Lucy and I get interrupted. And I'm doing something one-to-one with Lucy, another child in a mainstream school just comes up and says, Miss, look at this, and Miss, guess what? Things that Lucy can't do. She said, as soon as I reply to that other child, that seems to be one of the things that causes this behaviour. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I reflected on what was happening at home, and I thought maybe that's happening too for Lucy at home. Busy household, So, and in the mornings, I'm getting Lucy's shoes on. I've got stepchildren who used to stay very regularly. Husband going out to work. I thought maybe that's what's happening. So I said to everyone, if I'm with Lucy in the morning and I'm putting her shoes on, please, and you shout to me, I'm not going to answer you. Okay, so just I'll give you a squeak to let you know I've heard you, but I'm not going to answer you. Let's see what happens. And it worked. The next morning I put her shoes on, I ignored everyone else, I settled her down, she hadn't hit me, and she never hit me again. In that context, it stopped. So that was what worked. And we worked out over time that Lucy was trying to tell me certain things for her behaviour. I'm left out. Of course she's left out. She hasn't got the communication of so many other people. I want to chat and I need you. Sometimes she's telling me I'm not coping, this is too hard. Sometimes she's telling me I'm in pain. And sometimes she's saying, I just want to do this. My body just needs this. So understanding that was a great help. Next slide, please. I also learned about the arousal curve and what a wonderful thing this was to learn about. The arousal curve was a way of me charting Lucy's behaviours. Our learning disability nurse said to me, right, Debbie, I've got a job for you. You need to think about what Lucy looks like and what she does when she's in the green. This is the place where she's happy and calm and content. You need to also think about what she looks like and what she does when she's in amber, when she's starting to get a bit distressed. She said, we all know what she looks like in red. We've talked about that at length. And then we need to think about what she looks like after you've seen some behaviour described as challenging, this blue phase. And I thought, what does she mean? She just looks like Lucy, doesn't she? But actually, no, she doesn't. She does change. So next slide, please, Tracy. I started to think about it. And in green, Lucy has really sparkly eyes. She's really animated. Her face has lots of life to it. She initiates interaction and she initiates affection. She comes up and she does this and she wants a tickle. Or she comes up and she looks at you really close because she wants something from you. She can answer questions, simple questions, make choices, and she laughs. She flaps her hands and she sticks her legs out in front of her. She does an awful lot of things when she's in green, and she doesn't do any of those things when she's stressed. When she's stressed and she's in amber, her head goes down, her eyes go down, her shoulders go down. She has an irritable voice and she gets these really staring eyes that I've learned to really look out for. If I see those staring eyes, I know we're quite a way up that arousal curve. And I've missed maybe the fact that she's not had as much eye contact. I've missed maybe that her shoulders are a bit down. And this is why people need to know her. She has a much longer processing time, makes her very much harder to make decisions about things. She feels more distant. And often I say to families, this explains, doesn't it, why some people say, well, you could do that last week, Lucy. Why can't you do it now? I don't need to show you that again. And actually, the difference in her arousal levels is a difference in her performance, you know? So actually, we need to be understanding that actually it's quite, makes perfect sense that somebody could do something one week, can't do it the next, because of this change in their arousal levels. So I found that really, really important. Next slide, please. And just to back it up, I've just got some photographs to show you of Lucy when she's in amber and in green when she was little. You can see a difference, can't you? She looks different. You know, in the amber one, she's not got her glasses on for a start. That was always a big clue when she was little. Not so much now she's older. But her face has dropped. Even though she's sucking through a straw, her face looks dropped compared to how it does in the green photo. Her eyes are staring compared to those sparkly eyes that are looking in that photograph. So I often use photographs to say to people, she is different. You need to look for this, because often what happens is people tell me she's in green and she's not, she's in amber. And that is why sometimes behaviours are said to come out of nowhere. And I said they haven't come out of nowhere. She was really highly aroused on the arousal curve. She was very close to red. The further, if I can keep her in green, that's the better. That's what I want. So what I tend to do is I look out for these signals, these amber signals, and I do stuff. I give her, make sure she's got conversation, make sure she knows what's happening, make sure she's got everything she needs. She's not thirsty, hungry, in pain. If I can do that in amber, I head her back down to green, and therefore we prevent the behaviours in the red. It's been absolutely magic, really. Next slide, please. Another one showing you the difference between green and amber when she was little. Again, you can see those eyes. They tell it all. You know, really looking at someone in particular in the left one, and really staring through in the right hand one. And the face, how dropped it is. Next slide, please. This is Lucy a bit older now. And again, these are both amber. But that first picture, that's Lucy in amber. She rubs her knuckles. Okay, easily missed under a desk at school. Easily missed if you're not looking at her. She might be smiling, but she's not making eye contact, even though she likes to smile at the camera. In the second picture, she wears these headscarves and she pulls them right down over her head. Okay, and that is a clear signal. And that generally means get me out of here. Don't like it. So I watch the movements of her head. What she doesn't need at that point, and I know she has experienced, is to be told, Lucy, your buff goes on your head. Well, she knows her buff goes on her head. That's not the point. She shouldn't also be have a threat of punishment. Lucy, your buff goes on your head or it goes in your bag, which I also know that she has experienced. What we need to be saying is, oh my goodness, Lucy, what do you need? How can I help you? Something's not right. Do you need to leave? No. And that's the kind of things I have to explain to people who support Lucy. Next slide, please. So there are many proactive strategies that I take to make sure that Lucy has got everything she needs to try and keep her in that green or sort of low amber, heading her back to green. I have to try and make sure she's well. And, you know, we know people with learning disabilities face huge health inequalities. So we're really struggling to get Lucy's bloods taken. She's very frightened, can't explain why we need them. So we're looking at, we probably will need a general anaesthetic because even sedation hasn't worked. She has constipation. I have to really manage her constipation. That in itself can take a lot of conversation with people about, did she poo today? Was it, hard? Was it soft? Was it big? Did she have to strain? All these things are really important. So then I adjust her medicines and adjust her diet and adjust her exercise to make sure she's not constipated. I have to try and put strategies in place to help her sleep. She likes to know routines. Routines help her feel secure, don't they, for all of us? If we went to work and didn't know what we were facing that day until it actually came through until we were actually told, actually, you're going to be here today, you're going to be there today, this is what we want you to do, we would feel anxious. Lucy's like that all the time unless we tell her with things like the visual planner what her day might be holding. She likes choices, don't we all? So choices have been very powerful. We use choices to help Lucy transition from one activity to another. If she's watching television, I'll say, would you like 2 more YouTubes, Lucy, or 1 more YouTube before we go to have our bath? It's a really kind way. There's nothing bad about 2 YouTubes. There's nothing bad about one YouTube. So she can have a choice of 2 really nice things. That really helps. Always making sure she's got someone to chat to, recognising that she so easily gets left out. And then when she's in the green, I can try and teach her new activities and skills, because you can't learn anything when you're in amber or red or blue. And I have to constantly assess and balance the demands that are put upon Lucy. Because when I understand her and I understand the world she lives in, everything she does makes total sense. Next slide, please. This is Lucy connecting with two of her favourite people, her sister on the right, my stepdaughter, and her absolute favourite person, PA, Ruth. And what, you know, this is a child who I was told when she was 5 isn't social, doesn't like people. Oh, how wrong we were. Next slide, please. So to make this work, I had to do a lot of communicating. I have to be a bit of a royal pain in the neck, actually, because I need to know what everyone knows to make. I need everyone to know stuff, and I need to ask a lot of questions to get the information to support her. Next slide, please. I hear certain things, they're all untrue. We could do half an hour about this, that she'll rule the roost. I'm spoiling her. She knows what she's doing is wrong. No, she doesn't. She needs to learn. I always say, yes, she does. She needs to learn that she can trust me to actually respond to her needs. You're making a rod for your own back? No, I really haven't. We've gone from behaviours multiple times a day to a handful of times a year. So I've done the, you know, we've actually created a quality of life and a life for Lucy that I'm really, you know, pleased about and proud of, really, and I hope that you know, we can continue to do that for her, because it's what she deserves. Next slide, please. These are my 7 Ps of PBS. I made these up. You won't find these in a book, so I always say to people, just take or leave them. But first of all, I have to constantly predict the future. What's coming for Lucy? What do I need to make sense of for her? How do I explain it to her? How do I make this work for Lucy? But that it takes quite a lot of preparation, quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of perseverance, as you might get things wrong and you might get things right. I've had to be really patient with the process. We've been doing this for sort of 8 years now. And I'm really practiced at it. Those responses, that what do you need, my darling? What's wrong? Are very practiced. They sort of trip off my tongue now. They didn't years ago. They didn't. It's taken time. And I have to be really present. You can't support Lucy with half a mind on something else, being distracted yourself. She wants and needs your full attention when you're with her, and deserves it. Next slide, please. I'm coming to the end now, and what I want to say is I use this slide a lot when I'm talking about supporting Lucy, and I think it's so true of many people with learning disabilities, that actually we talk, don't we, about the road we're on, the life we travel, the road we're on. And I think for Lucy, the width of the road and the width of the path are a luxury. It's a tightrope. But I do hope that using these PBS approaches will actually turn this tightrope into a road or a path for her. Next slides, please. I think we're coming to the end now, Tracy. I've got some slides. These get shared. These are just some places to access support. Next slide. And that's it. Just a thank you from me for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Do get in touch if you've got any more questions. Thank you.
Oh, Debbie, thanks very much for that. That's such a powerful story and a very personal journey that you've been on, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of people and inspire others as well. I'll just check the chat. I don't think we've got any questions within the chat, but if anybody would like to ask a quick question, please feel free to take yourself off mute and pop your camera on. We do have a comment in the chat for you, Debbie, and it's from Sheila saying, that's a lovely story, Debbie, and thanks, you're amazing. And so is Lucy, and thank you for sharing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If I, as Debbie said, you can get in touch if you have any questions later, or if you want to share this recording with colleagues, feel free to do so. And then, of course, get in touch with Debbie. I have popped a link in the chat to a very brief evaluation form. Any feedback's always gratefully received. So if you could take 2 minutes of your time just to fill out the evaluation form, that would be really appreciated. And also, if you have any further suggestions for future Lunch and Learns about any topics that you'd like to hear about, or you know someone who has something that they could share, again, do get in touch. info@boost.org.uk. The address is on the screen there. And the next Lunch and Learn will be on the 8th of February, and it's about social prescribing for young people in Hartlepool. There's further information on the Boost website, along with the Teams link to join on the day, and it will be at 12:30 on the 8th of February. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. And as we said, do get back in touch with Debbie if you have any further questions. Thank you.